Jacob and Martha stood at the window, wiping sawdust off his hands as he watched his son Leleti step out in a brand new suit. The boy looked sharp, confident, full of pride. It was his graduation day. Jacob smiled quietly, his heart full, thinking of all the sacrifices he had made to reach this moment. He had worked back-to-back carpentry jobs, sometimes going without food just to make sure Leleti's tuition was paid on time. He even sold his mother's old land to cover the cost of a fancy graduation party, something his wife, Tando, said was necessary for a boy of status. Jacob had asked Tando several times about the party venue and the exact time, but she always brushed him off. "It's all under control," she'd say. "Don't worry about it." He trusted her. He believed that when the time came, he'd walk in proudly beside his family. But the truth hit him like a slap. A neighbor's child, holding a cupcake, casually said, "Uncle, aren't you coming to the party? It's already started." Jacob froze. "Already started?" he repeated, confused. The child pointed to the community center. Jacob rushed there, still in his work shirt, heart racing with excitement and confusion. But at the entrance, a security guard stopped him. "Sorry, sir. This is a private event. What's your name?" Jacob said it. The guard checked the list. "You're not on the guest list. Can you step aside, please?" Jacob's smile faded. He peeked inside. Balloons, music, a huge banner that read, "Congratulations Leleti, proudly hosted by Tando and Son." His chest tightened. There was no mention of him, not even a photo. Then he saw them, Tando laughing with guests, her arm proudly around Leleti. Cameras flashed, speeches began. People clapped as Tando was praised for being a single rock in her son's life. Jacob stood at a distance, hidden behind a fence, holding the small box he had crafted, a wooden pen set with Leleti's initials carved by hand. No one noticed him. No one mentioned him. He wasn't a guest at the party he paid for. He felt like a ghost. His eyes burned, but he didn't cry. He just stood there, heart cracked, watching the two people he loved most pretend like he didn't exist. In that moment, something inside him shifted. Not anger, not revenge, just a quiet, painful decision. Jacob had always been a simple man. He wasn't rich, but he was steady. He believed in hard work, honesty, and building a life with his own two hands. Years ago, when he met Tando, he thought she was the perfect partner. Smart, beautiful, full of big dreams. She was different from him in every way, but he loved that. He believed they would balance each other. He didn't have much, but he gave her everything he could: love, loyalty, and time. And when their son Leleti was born, Jacob promised himself he would give the boy a better life than he ever had. From the beginning, Tando pushed for more: a better house, a better car, a better school for Leleti. Jacob worked longer hours, sometimes late into the night, building furniture and repairing homes just to keep up. He put aside his own dream of opening a small workshop. Every extra coin went to private school fees, uniforms, and textbooks. He didn't complain. He thought he was doing what a good husband and father should. But over time, Tando's attitude changed. She started looking down on Jacob. She'd sigh when he came home covered in dust. "You'll never grow," she'd say, "always stuck in one place. You're a man with no vision." Jacob stayed silent. He hoped she'd see his efforts eventually. Leleti, once so close to his father, began to change too. As he grew older, he spent more time with his mother. He stopped coming to the workshop. He flinched when Jacob picked him up in their old pickup truck. One day, Jacob overheard him telling a classmate, "My dad just does wood stuff. He's not like those real professionals." That broke Jacob's heart more than any insult. Still, he didn't stop. When money got tight, Jacob made the hardest decision of all. He sold the small piece of land his late mother had left him. That land was meant for his workshop, but he used the money for Leleti's final year and the graduation party. He believed it was worth it. He thought love was enough, that one day they'd all look back and see what he had done for them. But the more he gave, the more invisible he became. His love was quiet, but their disrespect grew louder. Jacob didn't know it yet, but the foundation of his family was already cracking beneath him. Weeks before the graduation, Jacob began to feel something shift in the house. It was quiet, but it was there. Leleti, once warm and playful, now barely said more than a few words to him. He would come home from work and ask about his day, but the boy would just nod or walk away. Jacob told himself it was just stress from final exams, but his heart knew better. The bond between them had started to fade, and Jacob didn't know how to pull it back. Tando had changed too. She spent more time on the phone, always stepping out of the room when he walked in. When he asked who she was talking to, she'd say, "Just planning things for the party." But when he asked if he could help, she gave a flat smile and said, "It's all under control, no need to stress." He offered money, saying he wanted to contribute more. Tando waved it off. "We've got it covered." That sentence kept ringing in his ears. "We've got it covered," like he wasn't part of the we anymore. One evening, Jacob came home early and heard them talking in the kitchen. Tando was laughing with Lelity about the decorations and food orders. When he entered, they went silent. The laughter stopped. Lelity stood and walked to his room without looking at Jacob. Tando quickly gathered some papers and changed the subject. "You're back early," she said, avoiding his eyes. He nodded, pretending everything was fine, but deep inside, something twisted. That night, Jacob sat alone at the kitchen table. He took out a notebook and started to write. He wanted to pour out everything, his fears, his pain, his confusion. The words came slowly at first. "Dear Lelety, I'm proud of you." But as he wrote, tears began to fall. His hand shook. Drops of water blurred the ink. He tried to wipe them, but it only made it worse. The letter smudged into unreadable lines. He closed the book. He looked around the home he had built, the chairs he carved, the dining table he made by hand, the family photos that now felt like distant memories. He felt like a stranger in his own house. He had given them everything, yet now he was treated like he didn't belong. A storm was coming, but Jacob still hoped somehow it would. The morning of the graduation, Jacob woke up early. He took extra care getting dressed, wearing the same clean shirt he had worn to Lelity's first school play. It was slightly worn, but it meant something to him. He had polished his shoes the night before and placed the wooden pen set he carved for Lelity in a small gift box. It wasn't fancy, but it came from the heart. As he walked toward the venue, his heart beat fast with pride. He pictured Lelity smiling when he saw him. He imagined the hugs, the photos, the thanks. But everything changed the moment he reached the gate. A tall security guard stepped in front of him. "Good afternoon, sir." "Name?" Jacob answered with confidence. The guard checked the list, then frowned. "Sorry, your name's not here. Only invited guests can enter." Jacob blinked, confused. "I'm his father," he said quietly. But the guard didn't care. "Sorry, sir. I'm just doing my job." Jacob moved aside and looked through the gate. He could see inside the hall. Balloons floated near the ceiling, and a giant banner hung across the wall. In bold letters it read, "Congratulations, Lelity," sponsored by Tando and Lelity Mbatha. Jacob's name wasn't there, not even a mention. He stepped back, holding the gift box tighter. Just then, a woman passed by with her daughter. She smiled politely and said, "You must be the uncle. Lelity's lucky to have such strong family support." Jacob didn't reply. He just gave a tight smile and turned away. He stood near a fence and watched from a distance. The guests laughed, music played, and people took pictures with Tando and Lelity. He saw Tando glowing with pride, holding a glass, posing like she had raised Lelity alone. Then the moment came. Lelity walked up to the stage, the spotlight on him. Everyone clapped. Jacob leaned forward, hoping. Lelity began to speak. "First, I want to thank the strongest woman I know, my mother. She believed in me when no one else did. She's the reason I'm standing here today." Jacob froze. His eyes welled up. His heart dropped. Not even a single word, not even a glance his way. He wasn't just forgotten, he was erased. Still, he didn't move. He stayed there, silent and still, the gift box pressed to his chest. He didn't cry out or walk away. He just stood there, heart breaking in silence, watching the son he raised pretend like he never existed.
She never happens yet. Self-cast out the offer with Marfis now use. Never lose my head. Niece none of my sin for it. And share bless your vet in your head. And your mercy sit. Well, I've made a line. So be. Oh, Nalia see him. Falls. Fall for California. Mark up in the yet. You might see who for our man. We're Mitch over. Nasiam Elish Argus no well. Star Hammer. Who have seen Missy. Sing if you did he. Smash and did he. Swear sitter begish. Is and is your for nas. Did he farm sistel. Suifen. Snarus will say. Maybe did not so never come. Stay out. You will smurf. Snarf for the school begish. Did on net. This yes to say hash these. It must have soon. Ned nearly. Here is mingerish. Yes, these defension estate. Oh, snarschneid in the sea. Snarch stay out. The share the one. We never the scrapped or we. If han of sign and if you're very you have our favorites name it over thirst. Thirst the shit. With me shit on. I can either one. If it's not you in because this caps are sitting the nurse. Or free be his half but us like nuts. One the fun a blue val worthy. As we seen in the west worthy. Smash in the word. Just not. Have what's it. Live the star who has already smacked in the VS. The lock of the last eat the touch of a sortie. Say he'll know. Menar through but not acknowledge it. So he'll math of a shinoit yesterday. Now winning a last either. He'll out. I always as if it's because lost in it must. And she was now with all for you. Snums all the healers of the snip. Therapy because net. Snummer is a dead sea. Well of mess now warm, so I do mistake off the snitch eerie. Spotsy. You are reminded of father. May have seen soon that at low. Slow and fit them of so I'll off miss now have zoom the zest. You're not so we were handed. It's all on the day that's she. You'll well see it in the fear with all wicked.
As the final song faded and applause filled the hall, Jacob calmly stepped onto the stage. At first, people didn't recognize him. He stood tall, his expression calm, holding the same small gift box in one hand and the white envelope in the other. The chatter began to die down. Some guests looked confused. Others leaned in, sensing something serious was about to happen. He raised the microphone and gently cleared his throat. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice steady. "I want to first congratulate my son, Leletti. You've achieved something great today. I'm proud of you, truly." A few claps followed, unsure and hesitant. Tando shifted in her seat. Leletti stared at the floor. Jacob took a breath and looked around. "But behind every celebration," he continued, "there are often silent sacrifices. I am that silence." The room fell completely still. I worked double shifts. I gave up the dream of owning my own workshop. I sold the last piece of land my late mother gave me. I did all of this so my son could wear this suit, attend this school, and have this party. Whispers spread through the crowd. A few heads turned toward Tando and Leletti. Jacob didn't raise his voice. He just told the truth. "And yet today," he said, his voice softer now, "I was not on the guest list. I stood outside the gate, watching my son speak of strength and love, and I heard no mention of me." Gasps moved through the room. He held up the white envelope. "This," he said, "is the deed to the house. As of this morning, I've legally removed both my wife and son from it. You'll need to find another place to live." The room erupted. Shocked voices, murmurs, disbelief, but Jacob wasn't finished. "As for the college trust fund," he said, eyes on Leletti now, "I had saved it carefully for you, but today I'm donating it to 3 students, 3 young people who respect the people who raised them." People stared. Some nodded quietly. Others looked down, uncomfortable. Tando's face turned pale. Leletti looked like he'd been punched in the chest. Jacob stepped back from the microphone and placed the envelope and gift box on the table. "Sometimes silence is mistaken for weakness," he said, "but today I choose to speak." Then he turned, walked off the stage, and didn't look back. As Jacob stepped off the stage, the silence exploded into noise. Gasps turned into whispers, and whispers turned into murmurs. Tando jumped up from her seat, her heels clicking sharply as she stormed toward him. Her face burned with anger. "You bitter, useless man," she shouted, grabbing the mic from the table. "You think this makes you a hero? You think ruining your own son's day is something to be proud of?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some guests looked away. Others pulled out their phones, recording. Leletti chuckled nervously from his seat. "It's a joke, right? He's just being dramatic. It's just for show." But when he saw Jacob's steady face and the legal envelope still lying on the table, the smile slowly faded. Panic started to fill his eyes. He stood halfway, confused and frozen. Tando continued shouting into the mic, her voice rising higher. "I've held this family together. I made sure we looked respectable. You think being a carpenter makes you a saint? You never had vision, Jacob. Never." But the more she spoke, the more she lost the room. Guests began whispering again, but now their eyes were on her, not with admiration, but discomfort. Her words, once sharp, began to crack. She sounded desperate, not strong. Jacob turned back for a moment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move closer. He simply looked her in the eyes and said, "A man with no vision? Tando, I saw this moment coming long before you did." His voice was low, but it cut through the noise. Tando froze for a second, stunned. Leletti stood silently now, eyes wide, his world crashing around him. Without another word, Jacob turned and walked toward the exit. He didn't rush. He didn't look back. The doors opened and closed behind him with a soft click, leaving behind a room full of shocked faces, a screaming wife, and a son who suddenly realized he didn't know the man he had just ignored. The silence that followed was louder than any speech. That night, long after the guests had left and the decorations had begun to fall, Lelety sat in his room with the envelope Jacob had left behind. He opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside was the original letter his father had written. Not the legal documents, but a handwritten note. The ink was slightly smudged, as if it had been written through tears. The words were simple. Jacob had written about how proud he was of Lelety. He spoke about the first time he held him as a baby, how he worked nights just to buy his first school shoes, how he dreamed of sitting front row at his graduation. The letter didn't ask for thanks, it just expressed love. Quiet, constant, unwavering love. Lelety's eyes filled with tears. He gripped the paper tightly, rereading every word. He had ignored the very man who had carried him through life. He had let his mother's pride and judgment blind him. Now he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. Real, deep shame. Across the room, Tando sat in silence. Her eyes were swollen. She didn't speak. She had always been loud, always in control, but now there was nothing left to say. She stared at the floor, realizing that in her hunger for image and status, she had destroyed the only person who had been real from the beginning. Lelety picked up his phone and called his father. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. He sent a message, then another. Please, Dad, I'm sorry. Please talk to me. But the screen stayed silent. Meanwhile, Jacob sat quietly in a small room above his old workshop. Just a bed, a kettle, and a desk. It wasn't much, but it was peaceful. For the first time in years, no one dismissed him. No one talked over him. He could breathe. He looked out the small window, not with anger, but with calm. He had given his heart. They threw it away. Now he was finally giving something to himself. Freedom. Weeks had passed since that unforgettable night. The house that once echoed with Tando's voice now stood quiet. She wandered its halls alone, staring at photos on the walls, but none could comfort her. Meanwhile, Lelety, burdened with guilt, walked through town toward his father's small workshop. He stood at the door for a long time before knocking. Jacob opened the door, his hands dusty from woodwork. He didn't look surprised to see his son, just calm. Lelety's eyes were full of tears. Dad, I'm so sorry, he said softly. I didn't see what you did for me. I let you down. Jacob didn't speak right away. He looked at his son, then stepped aside, letting him in. The workshop smelled of sawdust and effort. It was simple but alive. Saying sorry is easy, Jacob said quietly. But learning respect, that takes work. Lelety nodded. Then let me work, he said. Let me earn it. Jacob pointed to a broom leaning against the wall. Start by sweeping the floor. At first, Lelety hesitated. He had worn designer suits, spoken at stages, and lived in comfort. Now, he was being asked to sweep. He felt embarrassed, but he picked up the broom. One stroke, then another. Time passed. The silence between them slowly became less heavy. Each day, he returned. He swept, cleaned tools, fetched supplies. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And as he worked, he began to understand. This place, filled with wood and dust, held more dignity than any stage. His father hadn't just built furniture, he had built a life with his bare hands. Jacob still didn't speak much, but he watched. Slowly, the wall between them began to crack. Meanwhile, Tando stayed in the big house, alone with her regrets. The silence there wasn't peaceful, it was empty. The space that once seemed powerful now echoed with everything she had lost. Her son was gone every day. Her husband had found peace elsewhere, and all her pride, once loud and sharp, now felt meaningless. The sun was setting as Jacob locked up his workshop for the day. The golden light fell softly on the wooden door, casting long shadows on the ground. As he turned to leave, he noticed something leaning gently against the entrance. He stepped closer, squinting in the fading light. It was a wooden photo frame, handcrafted, smooth around the edges, carefully made. Inside was a photo of Lelety in his graduation gown, smiling. But it wasn't just the picture that made Jacob stop. At the bottom of the frame, carved into the wood in clean, careful letters, were the words, "For the father who built my future with bare hands." Jacob froze. He picked it up slowly, holding it with both hands. The weight of it wasn't just from the wood. It was from everything it meant. He looked at the boy in the picture and thought of the child he once carried on his back to school. The same child who had once turned his face away, now reaching back, not with pride, but with humility. Jacob didn't say a word, his lips pressed together tightly, his eyes wet. He sat down on the workshop step, still holding the frame, staring at it quietly. In that moment, nothing needed to be spoken. The silence carried everything, the pain, the love, the regrets, and now, a start, a quiet beginning of forgiveness. It didn't erase the past, but it softened it. Later that night, he placed the frame on a shelf inside the workshop, right above his mother's old carving tool. He looked at it once more and nodded gently to himself. Love, he realized, didn't need loud speeches or fancy parties. Sometimes, it was in the things left unsaid, in a photo, a carved message, a small gesture that meant the world. And as the night settled over the quiet street, a father's heart, long bruised, began to heal, not all at once, but just enough.